So what happens when a large knife sharpening company decides they want to make a knife?
When Kyle was like, we're releasing a knife, my first thought was, oh no.
Okay. So this is me, standing in the Worksharp headquarters, telling the owner of one of the biggest knife sharpening companies in the world that after hearing Worksharp was making a knife, I assumed the worst. Large version, small version, M390, CPM 3V, Cerakote drop point, reverse tanto, manual button lock, but also auto conversion included. And if that's not enough, super lightweight magnesium integral handle, VRMX.
Lightweight magnesium handle. There's a reason nobody's using magnesium. Besides, it's not corrosion resistant at all. If you light magnesium on fire and put it on a car hood, it will melt all the way through the engine block because it can't put it out. You can't start a fire with this, right?
You can.
No going back now. We'll save that and the rest of the review for a little later.
Oh, you didn't say that, did you?
I don't know why I thought that. It doesn't matter.
So, I assumed wrong.
It's not a material that I would have ever even thought of.
And you know what they say when you assume.
There's a reason nobody...
But here's why. My fear was that they were going to do the safe option and release something very generic. Or dumb. Like this guy. Or this big box store brand knife that has a safety on it. And that was the absolute last thing that I wanted. And as we know, it's all about what I want. You see, what I really want in a knife is for the sharp portion to... Sharp portions. But in my defense, it was not just me who was worried.
And they were like, what do you think about this? And I'm like,
yeah.
My first reaction, if I'm honest with you guys, is why are you making a knife?
Yeah.
Do you need to make a knife? Do we need another knife maker? And it's not because I didn't think they could make a good knife. It was just like, why?
Yeah.
Right? And I saw their beta knife at the Next Blade Show, which was last year, and I was like, oh shit, that's why.
What was your first thought? Worksharp knives.
So honestly, at first, I didn't think that they were gonna use like a good steel or anything. I don't know why I thought that.
I don't know why I thought that either.
Yeah,
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I thought that they were gonna use like, what are you gonna use, like a what is it, like the throwaway blades, you know, like something that you'd see on like a utility blade, or just a no-name steel. I didn't think they were gonna go that far, but I just didn't think that they were going to try to advertise to the knife guy. Then I also thought they were doing something 100% conventional, like something that just every other company's done, where it's like, you know, say a liner lock, frame lock, you know, just something normal. Like I didn't think that they were going to try to do something unique, something different, which completely surprised me.
You see, I want thin blade stock, overall lightweight, good steel, deep carry, left-handed convertible pocket clip, for crying out loud, and something easy to open and close. Which is actually really tough to find. So when Kyle from Worksharp sent me an email and said that they were releasing a knife and wanted me to come out to their headquarters to be one of the first ones to check it out, at first, I was a little apprehensive. That is until I did some snooping on Worksharp's YouTube channel where I saw a secret picture of the knife they snuck into one of their recent videos. And at that point, I knew it was something different. So I hopped on a plane to see it for myself, and I had no idea what I was in for. So day one, we were taken to the Cerakote factory where they were doing the Cerakote on Worksharp's knives, which was pretty freaking amazing, to be honest. Now, we weren't allowed to film the good stuff, or a lot of stuff in general, but that place was like NASA, which I have actually been to, or somewhere important like that. For someone who likes mechanical things, that place was absolutely amazing. And I couldn't believe how nice and accommodating they were to a bunch of knife YouTube influencers. Man, I hate that term. I'm just some idiot who makes videos in his garage. But I was absolutely blown away by Cerakote's hospitality as well as their facility.
We also do durability testing on every single batch of Cerakote. Everyone ready? Yep, got it. Which looks like a scratch, but it's actually taped.
Now, after we left Cerakote, We then got a tour of Worksharp headquarters, which was way bigger and way cooler than I thought it was gonna be. Now they had all kinds of fancy equipment, a robot, and a guy named Dan.
Yeah. We could talk about that for days, I think.
Their lead engineer, who I spent way too much time talking to.
There's industry standards for some, like knives don't have industry standards, so there's no public or private entity that's really come up with here's the adapted everything complies with. So a lot of cases we're developing our own. Some of this equipment we can buy off the shelf, so that's an off the shelf machine. But a lot of the equipment we have to build ourselves because there's not a demand for testing the type of products we make sometimes.
We then went into the knife room where they were building the new RMX knife line, and we got to build our own knives. And this was me attempting to figure out how to assemble my own knife with Eric, one of their engineers, watching closely over my shoulder. Sorry, Eric, I was on like 3 hours of sleep.
So, what it seems like...
It's gonna be a good time to test out your video.
That would have. And that knife is this knife right here. And I know what you're thinking. Is it actually any good?
It's good though. It's good.
I actually had a prototype of the original for like a year now, and it has an auto feature or a manual feature. You can take the spring out and make it just manual like this, or you can turn it into an auto. This is the first time I'm checking out the small one, but I think this is a phenomenal size, super smooth, locks closed and open, feels very solid. This one's M390. They do have 3V versions as well. Not sure if this is the way they're doing it, but I think the spear points or drop points are M390 and the sheep's foots are 3V. At least that's what I've seen so far. Integral handle, made out of magnesium. The magnesium handle, man, so smooth.
At Blade Show, they showed me the betas, which were basically, it was this but the reverse Tonto and then the full size. Both reverse Tonto, very thin, slicey 3V, and that was enough for me to like, oh, you guys are serious, right? You're using 3V, going super thin, and you know what you're doing. You're not just jumping on the bandwagon making a knife. And then they explained the cassette pivot, right? It comes out, you can make it auto on the fly, which was very cool. And I didn't really understand the full implications at the time of the integral magnesium. That's one that I think will be lost to a lot of people, but it's really clever. They cast this and then they machine it, which is just clever. It's really smart. Like every little detail of this is very smart.
So what are your thoughts on magnesium?
It's new, right? This is to my knowledge, the first time that a knife maker's using magnesium for a handle. It's not something I would have ever thought, but it's really tough, right? Power to weight, I guess, strength to weight ratio, whatever you want to call that, is really high, right? It's lighter than aluminum and it's tougher. It's more stiff than titanium, but it's corrosive. That's the big question mark, like how corrosive. Yep. Very, very lightweight, like almost too light, right? Not in a bad way, but it catches you off guard, especially with the...
It does, yeah.
With the 3V blade, because it's just a thin blade, thin everything. I mean, it's just...
It's lightweight, but it's not cheap. It doesn't feel cheap. It feels anything but cheap.
Yeah, it doesn't feel cheap at all. Yeah. It's like, this is gonna draw some fire, but it's like the bug out, but not flimsy.
Oh, you didn't say that, did you?
My biggest feedback for them was the wording and the documentation in the box. Like that's how dialed it was a year ago.
If you want to see more about the different versions and auto to manual changeover, definitely go check out Taylor's video, which I'll link below. Now all this stuff is great and all, we could talk about specs forever, but does the knife actually perform as it should? Well, I ran my own super scientific testing with my own specialized equipment. Some cardboard, a brass rod, and some 2x4s. Now, I looked at the factory edge, and it was about as good as you can get from a factory edge. Shaving sharp and burr free. Now, if you want to see how they're doing their factory sharpening, go check out Jerad's video from NEEVES Knives, which I'll leave a link to down in the description below. Now, I did play around with the geometry with the brass rod test and the wood twist test, and I did find the apex and steel to perform very well. So my brass rod test, which is dropping a calibrated 2x4 onto the knife, which is sitting on a brass rod. This is basically showing yield strength of the apex at certain geometries, and the M390 held up very well, with most of the damage disappearing at about 22 degrees per side, which is very good. Also, same with the wood twist test, which is primarily testing yield toughness and resistance to chipping. And all the damage in this test disappeared at around 24 degrees per side, which is also very good. Now, this doesn't really mean anything other than the steel is performing very well and nothing is off with the heat treatment in these aspects. And I tested the steel at more extreme geometries at 17 degrees per side doing standard cutting tasks, and it also held up extremely well. This combined with the fact that the M390 tested at 61 HRC gives us a good understanding that the steel is heat treated very well and you'll get very good performance out of these knives. Now I don't have the 3V versions, but hopefully in the future we can test those as well. So overall the knife is performing exactly how it should be and maybe even a little bit better. However, there are things that I would change. Yes, I really do like the handle. You guys know if you've watched the channel for a while that I like ultra light knives, and this knife is about perfect in that regard. Super light, but also not cheap feeling. And even doing heavy tasks, there's no flex, it's just absolutely rock solid, which for a knife this light is quite an accomplishment. Now I did do some spine impact testing and the RMX passed no problems, still solid and smooth all around. And you may not think that this is a valid test, but I think it is, since I do have some knives that fail this test with the absolute lightest of taps. So whether it's relevant is up to you. Now, there is one thing that I would change after actually using it, and it's the plunge choil area. Now, the one area where I did experience a small problem with this knife was the grind itself. I found that when cutting certain items like cardboard or insulation or some other soft material, a lot of times that material will get pulled into this choil area and sort of bind up in your cutting. Now what I find helps with this is actually moving this grind line right up to the cutting edge, but essentially that gets rid of your sharpening choil or your hard stop for your sharpening. And a lot of people like that. I'm not one of those people. I like the grind line to actually be a guide for the material and actually guide the material into the cutting edge. And a lot of times that's what will happen if you move this plunge line right up to the cutting edge. Now this is especially noticeable on thicker blade stock. This is really thin blade stock, so it's not going to be as noticeable as it is with 3/16 stock or something like that. Because you have a deeper grind, you have a deeper guide to guide that material into the cutting edge. So on this knife, I think that this one tiny little thing that could be changed is something that I would change. But other than that, it's about as good as it could possibly get for what it is. So back to the burning question. You can't start a fire with this, right?
You can, but it's, if you ever use a magnesium starter, they're pretty bad in general. And they're pure magnesium. This is an alloy of zinc, aluminum, and some other stuff to make it stronger and more corrosion resistant. Yeah. But even pure magnesium, it usually takes so much to get the magnesium to light that you could have lit your tinder or something else anyway in that meantime. Now, if you had nothing but wet tinder, the magnesium is going to help it go. Yeah. But this, because it's alloyed with so many other metals, it's not a great fire starter.
Now, as much as I would like to try and light one of these things on fire, I like them more than to try and light one of these on fire. So I'm not going to. But I got something better. Some pure magnesium rod from Amazon. Who knows if it's actually pure? Probably not, but let's see what happens when you try to light it on fire. So yes, if you scrape off small pieces, it lights very easily and burns white hot. But will a larger piece burn straight through a car engine block if it did happen to light on fire? Let's find out. And no, a regular lighter won't light a large piece. Even if you throw it directly onto a fire grate on top of a very hot fire, it won't light. At least not for a very, 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 very long time. It probably won't. I'd lost patience and I took it off. In order to get it to light, I had to cut a smaller piece so it wouldn't roll, put it on a piece of 1/4 inch steel, literally in the middle of a very hot coal bed. And even then, it took a solid 4 minutes and 24 seconds before anything interesting started to happen. And even when it did, it didn't burst into flames, it just sort of sat there and sparkled. Very anticlimactic, depending on who you are. And even after poking it with a shovel, it didn't even remotely burn through the steel. So I think the only other burning question here about magnesium is corrosion resistance. The magnesium alloy these handles are made of are Cerakoted to help protect against corrosion. Now I saw some uncoated raw magnesium versions some of the Worksharp employees have been carrying for, I think, a couple of years, and they looked fine. Actually, really fine. I wish they released a raw magnesium version of this knife. That would be pretty cool. But I think the only real concern with corrosion is around some of the tighter tolerance areas like the button lock or pivot if it came into contact with seawater or something highly corrosive like that. So did I get what I wanted with the specs of this knife? Are you going to get what you want with the specs of this knife? Or does it even matter?
I think part of knives, though, is such a visceral purchase. That looks cool, I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And even if you can teach someone that this is the best, the fastest, the highest speed, if it doesn't speak to their personal taste, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
So anyway, when are these things gonna be released? Well, they're gonna be released at Blade Show this year, June 6th in Atlanta, Georgia, and on the Worksharp website. I will also be walking around all 3 days at Blade Show this year, so I hope to see you there. As for price, at the time of this recording, I don't have an official price, but I am being told sub $200, which is kind of crazy. You get a lot for that. Anyway, this knife is quickly becoming one of my favorites simply due to the uniqueness of the blade design and the cool story behind it. Special thanks to Worksharp for having us out, showing us the process behind this knife, and to Cerakote for the awesome factory tour. What a cool story behind a pretty cool knife.
Filming in the lobby of the hotel because it's quiet. It's a little swanky and we're a little strange.
I've been trying to get Ben all day. This is literally the last chance I had.